for people who are considering making a pitch with the largest strategic companies that exist, learning from watching somebody else's pitch based on the niche that they're going after in order to be successful. Technology and innovation, very excited to see inventors, investigators, entrepreneurs. That's fascinating, really providing guidance to people and companies and firms and entrepreneurs that want to develop products that address an unmet clinical need.
Welcome to The Pitch. My name is Anthony Viscogliosi. May I introduce our first company, 3D for Healthcare. And let's go to the video.
Personalized precision care is on the rise. Medical three-dimensional printing advancements are bringing healthcare providers closer to their patients, enabling care delivery that is customized to better serve unique individual needs. For healthcare providers, this newly accessible technology provides better training and more accurate insights into complex cases, which can help result in a higher standard of care and better patient outcomes. For patients, 3D printing can bring new degrees of comfort and personalization to their treatment, giving them greater confidence and consent in the level of care they receive. Ricoh 3D for Healthcare makes the printing of anatomic models of internal organs, bones, and tissue from scanned patient data accessible, affordable, and practical in today's practice of personalized precision care. How can 3D medical modeling help your healthcare organization? Talk with a Ricoh 3D for Healthcare representative to learn more.
Ricoh 3D for Healthcare. What an interesting concept and dynamic. What if a surgeon, before walking into the OR, can perfectly document in a 3D printed model the patient's anatomy that the physician needs to address, and use that as a planning tool to make better decisions and to create the precision that Ricoh 3D for Healthcare is suggesting? Well, let's turn it over to Gary Turner, who is Managing Director for Ricoh 3D for Healthcare, to tell us a little bit more about the opportunities that he has to change patient care. And as we go to Gary, I'd like to go to our first panelist to ask Gary a few questions. So Audrey, may I ask you to step in and interrogate Gary?
Thanks, Tony. And hi, Gary. Congratulations. This looks like a really nice opportunity for Ricoh, expanding on what I guess I was most familiar with in an office setting as being the printer business. So this is definitely a departure from that. I'm curious first, what clinical conditions or anatomical areas are most frequently produced by this Ricoh 3D printing?
Thank you, Audrey, for the question. And it's a pleasure as well. And I'm ready for the interrogation, as Tony referred to it. Our primary areas of focus to start with are orthopedics and craniomaxillofacial, which is where, if you look across the industry, the most widely used applications in this space are typically in orthopedics and in craniomaxillofacial. So that's our area of focus to begin with.
Great. And I noticed someone with kind of a potato peeler peeling off some layers of one of your models. Is it external geometry only or internal as well? Like for a knee tibia, would it show the intermedullary canal?
So sorry, give it a second. All right. The answer to that is it depends on how the CT or MRI scan or the DICOM image is segmented, because you can segment both internal and external. So that all depends on how the process is set up to begin with, but the answer is yes, you can pretty much print any component of the anatomy. The key, and we'll talk about this at some point, is the front end of the process, which is that segmentation. That segmentation has been the bottleneck that organizations have faced in trying to really utilize 3D printing in their practices day in and day out, which is addressed by the solution that we brought to market. But to answer your question, yes, it can pretty much, we can pretty much produce any component if it's captured in the CT or MRI scan.
Okay. And maybe one last question. Can it merge CT and MRI images, or is it one or the other?
With our initial launch, it is either one or the other. But I can tell you there are plans in the works to merge those as well.
Exciting. Thank you.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much, Audrey, for your questions. Now, let's go to Scott, Dr. Bruder, for your questions to help us better understand the opportunity that exists here with Ricoh 3D for healthcare.
Thank you, Tony, and thank you, Gary, for the opportunity to review this and see the evolution of these technologies moving forward. What immediately jumps to mind for me is the value that these kinds of models can have in terms of resident and medical student or fellow teaching opportunities. And I see that because you can actually disarticulate and disassemble these, particularly in the complex anatomies of craniomaxillofacial or even of spinal pathology. I'm wondering what kind of feedback you have from surgeons in terms of simple pre-surgical planning. Do they think that they really need this, or is it a nice to have? Could you give me some sense of the kind of key opinion leader feedback that you're getting?
Thanks for the question. I think the answer to that the direct answer to that really depends on the level of experience of that physician. In particular, you were talking about the value to residents and really to surgeons just entering the market who don't have a lot of experience. They tend to find more value in all uses of additive manufacturing, 3D printing of anatomic models, whereas a more experienced surgeon will likely focus to more complex surgeries. But I think one of the other advantages, we talk about education, you talk about surgeon education, but what about patient education? So if you're a surgeon and you can meet with your patient and show them the exact situation or issue that they have, in this case, obviously we're looking at a tumor, and for that surgeon to be able to say, Mr. Patient, Mrs. Patient, this is your exact problem, and here's what I'm going to do to solve that problem. Here's how we're going to resect this tumor. Here's the situation you'll deal with afterwards. Here's how I'm going to resolve it. The level of comfort that especially for a more inexperienced surgeon, the level of comfort that type of experience can give to the patient can absolutely accelerate informed consent, which, as we know today, is very important. So again, I think the answer really, as far as the utility, though, of anatomic models, depends on the experience of the surgeon.
Okay, thank you. Can you provide some color commentary around the business model? Meaning, if I have my practice and you come and you have some pathology and I want to be able to share that with you, what is the expected turnaround time between scanning, data collection, and 3D printing coming back to the office, and what is the range of pricing for that? I would imagine a small, a fractured finger set would be much less expensive than a complex scoliosis spine case, but some range of pricing would be helpful.
All right, so let me answer the turnaround question first. The key, I guess, decision point or inflection point that we need to resolve is the approval of the surgeon for the final design, because the way the process works, obviously, as you begin with whatever the imaging study is, CT scan, MRI. The next phase of that is the segmentation of that image, the conversion of that image into a three-dimensional model, which at that point is a virtual model. That virtual model moves into a case management workflow portal that we have created. And at that point, our biomedical engineering team takes over and begins to work with that surgeon to ensure that the final design is exactly what they want. For example, as I showed this model earlier, this bone obviously has been split in half. Our engineers can take that 3D model and put different colors on it. They can cut it in half based on what the surgeon's requirements are. So the thing that we need before we print is that surgeon to approve and say, yes, that is exactly what I want. That matches my requirements. At that point, we can guarantee a turnaround time. Our goal is to have that back out to the surgeon within 48 hours. If it's a really, really large print, it could take up to 3 days because certain prints can take 3 days or 2 days, 48 hours to print if it's a really large item. In terms of pricing, you're right, the range is vast. You could look at something as simple as $200 or $300 up to $15,000, depending on the size and the complexity and the different materials that are required. Again, using this as an example, what you see here is a soft material in the middle that replicates the bone marrow. You've got your hard outer material, and then a third material representing the tumor. Something like this would be more expensive to print because of different materials, whereas a simple bone model, which is a single material, could be quite a bit less, and of course the size has an impact on it as well.
Okay, that's helpful. The last question, which my intern over here just raised, is one related to reimbursement. So I would imagine that this is all going to be out-of-pocket expense or absorbed by the clinician. So how do you think about that? Because as a potential patient, I'm thinking, do I want to pay $500 or $1,000 or $5,000 to see the pathology? It's a question because I could see it on an X-ray. No question a three-dimensional model is better, right? But it's a question of how much is that? Because I'm not sure I can see third-party private payers or Medicare covering that expense.
So I'll actually address the reimbursement topic specifically. About 2 years ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, CPT level 3 codes were created for the collection of data to basically prove out the utility and the value of these 3D printed models. So right now, reimbursement obviously is limited. It's based on individual case and working with individual insurance companies. But the objective is within the next 2 to 3 years to have gotten through that data collection process and actually have CPT-1 codes, which will be reimbursable. The other piece to that, which I think is also important, is this particular type of case. The Radiological Society of North America has a special interest group they call the 3D Special Interest Group, which has released what they call the appropriateness guidelines for the exact types of surgeries that benefit most from 3D printing. And so I think, as we begin to work with surgeons or a new surgeon, those are the places where we'll start, are the ones that have been identified as the surgeries where you can derive the most value from the use of a 3D print.
Let's now go to Michael.
Thanks, Tony, and thank you, Gary. In general, I love this technology. In my firm, we have 4 3D printers. We print stuff really on a daily basis, but we don't do it in as sophisticated a manner as what you can do. We're just kind of getting the nuts and we get what we need, which are nuts and bolts. Are you finding that in other words, basic prints of prototypes. Are you finding that the applications are more patient education or preoperative planning?
I think the applications, quite frankly, are both. There's a lot of, like I referenced before, the RSNA appropriateness guidelines. They identify the different benefits out there. So I can't speak to, obviously, their work. But the benefits are pretty broad in terms of both education as well as surgical insights and so forth.
I appreciate, so let me interrupt you here. I appreciate that they are both possible, both preoperative planning and patient education is valuable. But for instance, if it's preoperative planning, the surgeon doesn't need a special color. He doesn't need a different material. The surgeon can look at, they may need some segmentation showing different planes, but they don't need the presentation that a patient might appreciate or benefit from. So I'm wondering if you guys have a sense for what's being ordered.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mix of the two, and you're absolutely right. If a surgeon is using it for their own purposes, a much more simple model will suffice, and obviously keep the cost down. So yeah, but the demand that we see out there is pretty equal.
Okay, thank you. How, I had the same question Scott I asked, which is, what's the turnaround time? And I appreciate from approval, it's 48 hours or 72 hours, but what's the front end of that typically with surgeon approval and back and forth and segmentation? Is that 48 hours? Is that a week? And I appreciate it's a range.
So obviously the time it takes for the surgeon to approve it is, varies 100% based on that surgeon. The segmentation is really the biggest bottleneck, and what we brought to market is a very, what's the best word, I guess, a much faster process than what has been historically available. And so, we've had experts in this space test it and tell us that it's up to 70% faster than the traditional ways that they've done for segmentation. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, segmenting a simple bone, this could take 10 minutes. If you've got a really complex segmentation you're doing, that includes, maybe a tumor, it includes some. You want to see the surrounding arteries and veins and nerves and all of that. Something like that could take, 5 to 7 or 10 or even 12 hours of time. So, you're right. That is very dependent on the complexity. But I think, as I talked about, our focus to begin with is heavily orthopedics and craniomaxillofacial, and those are, typically maximum a couple of hours if it's really complex. Yeah. It also depends on, if there was a pre-existing surgery, you got lots of scatter produced during the scan, and also the quality of the scan is also has an impact on how long that segmentation takes. So,
sure, that all makes sense. I guess my last question is: have you guys dealt with soft tissue tumors at all? I know orthopedic applications are the most popular, but if you can segment vascularity, this might find good application, real significant application in soft tissue tumors, whole organ type of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the tool is capable of segmenting soft tissue and bone as well. So. It is capable, absolutely, of segmenting soft tissue tumors. Again, the initial scan is what has the biggest impact on the quality of that segmentation. but yeah, it's capable today of segmenting both. I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, great.
Terrific.
Gary, thank you very much for the answers to the questions from our panel. Thank you, Michael, for the depth of the questions that you presented. As the moderator, I have the opportunity as well to present a couple of questions. And so, if I may, Gary, Ricoh is a giant business and is involved in many things and is recognized around the world as a leading business in the field of printing. Most surely, it's becoming a leader in 3D printing. Do you one day foresee Ricoh developing 3D printing machines that can be used outside in a doctor's office after some visualization technology is implemented, the imaging, where doctors can push a button just like they can do today to print out an X-ray or print out a document? Ricoh's, expert in document processing as well, and so a document can be visualized as a 3D document. And
Right.
with this capability, I'm wondering if you're, as a business strategy, going long term, that throw down the field of the goal line being a printer in every healthcare facility that's printing these things, and you supply the materials.
So let me start with what our vision is for this business. This is our focus, quite frankly, is a services solution approach to this industry. Our objective is not to sell printers, so to speak. The idea is to create an end-to-end workflow so that surgeons across really the globe can have access to 3D printing, which is very difficult today because of the bottlenecks. We talked about segmentation. If you think about the workflow that a surgeon has to deal with and the daily pressures of a surgeon, they don't have time to really take out of their busy day to figure this all out. And so what we brought to market is a turnkey solution that is embedded directly into the existing workflow of the surgeons today. Our partner on the front end of this is IBM Watson Health Imaging. And our goal is to take this from a very niche solution where your highest end institutions have this, your Mayo Clinics and Stanford Health and Cleveland Clinic. They have some level of 3D printing capabilities. Our objective is actually to bring this to every surgeon across the country and across the globe ultimately. But it's as a service, not so much the hardware. And keep in mind one of the other, and recently the FDA has come out with some guidance for healthcare facilities. If they want to begin using 3D printing in-house for doing things like this, they have to implement a quality management system and really follow a lot of the things that a medical device manufacturer has to do. So the future phase of this is Ricoh to bring a turnkey solution, what we call point-of-care manufacturing, on premises to these hospitals where they need it, so they can access directly and with faster turnaround times this capability without them having to invest a lot of money up front to try to create that on their own.
Mm-hmm. So, in summary, your business model is to use the brand of Ricoh, IBM, and the brand of IBM Watson to work together to deliver a service solution to physicians to enable physicians and patients to better understand how to approach the anatomical problem. Is that right?
Yes, you said it very succinctly.
Well, with that summary, audience, it's now time for you to make a vote and decide, is this a technology of the future? And if it is, which direction do you think it is going? In a good way, a medium way, or maybe it's not the right direction? Let's go to the polling.
Thank you, Tony. We do have one question I want to reference here before we start the poll. And that would be, what is the cost for a spine surgeon who might want to have a single L3S1 model? If I can provide you the CT scan. Well, I do believe that is a question directly for Gary, and his contact information. I'll go back and show it on the screen right after the poll, so you can jot that down and make sure you give Gary a call. All right, so what do you think? Winner, game changer, challenge standard of care, and see how this fits. Okay, I got another few seconds here. I'll say another 10 or 15 seconds. That's coming in very quickly. Wonderful. All right, let me share the results. And we've got 18% said it is a winner and game changer, could challenge standard of care, but needs more work. Something here, but it's hard to see. And one person thinks it goes back to the drawing board. I can certainly understand that. I think, however, we're going to look back on this business in about 3 to 5 years and be astonished how much it's grown. I really like what they're doing, and we'll see how they penetrate the existing market. Well, audience, let me share. Excuse me here again. Let me share the screen, and you jot down, anyone who wants to, please jot down Gary's contact information. It's gary.turner@ricousa.com. And with that, I'll remind everybody, we're on again on February the 10th with 2 new companies who are defining the future of orthopedics and spine. And thank you all for attending.